Okay, so we're going to do a few interesting things today, a few cool and new things that we usually don't do on webinars. And the first thing is just introducing the topic, right? Votiro, we're the Zero Trust Content Security company. We'll talk about what that means in a moment. But more importantly, we want to focus on insights, interesting insights and analytics you can gather from threat, and how to use them in a very different way than what you might be traditionally used to using analytics. Analytics can be used post-mortem after something happens in order to investigate an incident and remediate. A better way of using analytics is actually using them before something happens and preventing threat upfront beforehand. So let's talk about how we do that. That can be really interesting. An even better way of using analytics is using analytics not in order to remediate, because remediation may have already happened automatically in the background, which is the best case scenario. And then insights and analytics are used in a very different way. So we'll talk through that. And I promised a Houdini stunt at the end of the session where I actually upload from my own laptop during the webinar a super malicious HTML file, and I'll show you why in a few minutes. So let's get going. I hope it doesn't destroy my MacBook. Or will it? Okay, if I drop off, you'll know why. So let's talk about the unknown malware dilemma for a few seconds, and I'll give you kind of a bit of a background on Votiro as context to what we're going to talk about. At Votiro, we know that threats come in many different ways, and most threats that come in and actually present a risk to your company are the unknown variant, right? We're worried about the known variant, right? Those malwares that have a known signature, the antivirus vendors know who they are and what they do, and they've already posted them weeks or months ago. And once that file type comes in, we detect that specific variant. We know that that signature is known to be malicious, and we block it. Or if it is suspicious, we quarantine it. At Votiro, we take a very, very different approach. With what Votiro Cloud does, yeah, we do detect those known variants, but we worry also about the unknown variants, the ones that antivirus and sandbox and other technologies might not detect. Even an endpoint detection product may not detect them on day one. And it may take a few days or potentially a few weeks until that specific variant may be detected, and then you need to remediate and clean up the mess and all of that good stuff. With Votiro, we prevent that threat from coming in the first place by passing on only the good content. Now, we know from research we're doing and third parties we work with that 71% of incidents from malicious unstructured data, so files coming in through email or Slack or Teams or browser downloads, 71% of them actually evade the security controls you have in place. Antivirus, sandbox, EDR, they come in, they bypass what you have, they land on the endpoint, they do some damage, then we figure it out, then we clean up the mess. We also know that that exact type of attack is something that has changed its modality a bit lately. Instead of all coming in through email, we're seeing it coming in through collaboration tools like Teams and Slack, or browser downloads through Shadow IT, or portal uploads, customer, consumer-facing, third-party-facing partner portals, where they upload content, unsafe content, into our environment. We need to deal with some of the riskier variants within those files. So the problem is stated. We have a significant amount of files. Actually, 80% of the data that you have is unstructured data files. That's coming in from many different attack vectors, and we need to deal with making sure that it is safe to be used. So the first thing I'd like to ensure that we all are realizing, the cyber kill chain, throughout the entire cyber kill chain, files can be used in many different ways in order to land a payload, a malicious payload, on an endpoint, on a server, maybe in a SaaS application, so it's later used on in a specific mode of attack. Once that bot or Trojan A disguised malware lands on the endpoint. It can root itself. It can harvest credentials. It can do a whole lot of interesting things. Denial of service attacks, data exfiltration, all kinds of interesting modes of attack. And in order to prevent that, I'd like to establish first what exactly Votiro does, and then we talk about the interesting aspect of threat analytics and insights. What we've realized at Votiro 12 years ago is that as files come into your networks and devices, and as users are consuming them, files are really that lifeblood of the digital business. If I'm an HR person and I am receiving an influx of resumes, I need these resumes to be efficient and active and effective in my job. If I'm a salesperson, I need to receive the purchase orders in order to do my job. If I'm a legal person, I need to receive the contracts in order to do my job, right? These are legitimate files that may carry with them risk because they're coming in from external sources or from insider threat. So the content is needed. How do we ensure that the content is delivered safely and in real time, not delayed, not quarantined, not blocked? I don't need to go beg IT for the file. How do we ensure that the content is delivered in real time and is safe to be used? And what you're seeing, this neat graphic on the on my slide, is actually showing you exactly what we do. We're file experts. We deliver safe content from a unsafe file to a safe file to the user. And we leave behind a bunch of stuff. Everything we leave behind is not only the known variants, not only the known signatures of malicious content, but also a whole host of things that should not be in that file in the first place. In many cases, we and others don't know on day zero that that is a malicious payload. We just know it shouldn't have been there in the first place. And as the file is delivered, that file is 100% safe, or as close as possible. We never in the cybersecurity space say 100%, but as close as possible to 100% safe, with everything potentially malicious left behind. So Votiro takes a zero trust approach to data security and to file security. The same zero trust approach that you would take with identity and access, the same type of approach is being taken here on files and data. We trust no file. We assume every file is malicious or suspicious, and we treat it as such, delivering 100% safe files across all mediums, across email and collaboration tools and browser downloads and portal uploads and SaaS applications and file transfers and data warehouses, anywhere where data resides. So now I'd like to pause there for a moment and talk about analytics. Because in the traditional threat space, analytics were actually used in a very different way. Let's take an antivirus for an example. An antivirus provides you a list of, hey, I've scanned 20,000 files, I've blocked 150 files which I found malicious. Great. Now you have 150 files that you need to deal with and go analyze whether they're actually malicious or not, and maybe release them to the user, and that introduces another investment in time and effort. So the traditional type of analytics create more work. If you think about the more, I'd say, modern type of analytics, it is the threat feeds and threat intelligence information you receive from your endpoint detection, which says, Eric, something's going on here. You may be at risk. You might need to take action. Something suspicious is happening on this endpoint. That is great. That is much, much better than the analytics which basically create more work for you. But even this type of analytic is a post-mortem type of analytic. It says something is already happening, which is wrong. Now go figure out a way to remediate. How? Maybe by blocking, maybe by isolating that workstation and cleaning it up or updating its operating system. There's a list of things you now need to do in order to mitigate and fix that specific problem. What I'd like to introduce is a whole different type of insights. A type of insights that assures you that the problem was already solved and gives you insights into how you can make your preventative threat prevention, your proactive threat prevention, even better next time around. The problem is already solved. There's no need to panic. Here's how you improve your security stance for the next attempted attack. So let's talk about three. All good things come in threes. So let's talk about the three aspects of analyzing insights: the where, the who, and the how. Where is, for me, where are threats coming in from? What are the sources from which threats are coming into my environment? And what is the destination of that threat? Where is it intending to land? Who means, for me, two things, two sides of the same coin. Which users are being targeted? Maybe it's one of my engineers being targeted, but maybe it's my CFO being targeted, but also potentially malicious insiders that might be targeting our platforms. And how introduces the notion of a much more sophisticated notion of what is the attack footprint? What can we find in those footprint that would tell us something about how we are being attacked? Once we know that, we can take a whole lot of interesting actions. So let's start with question number one: where? I've seen, and this is coming out of a pretty significant amount of discussions with many tens, if not hundreds, of security teams and analysts in the past few months, where we've analyzed trends in new attack vectors. Traditionally, most folks think about the email as the main attack vector, where phishing attacks come in and potentially other modes of attack coming in, which may carry malicious payload and would then try to convince you to download and install that or run that specific program or file, which is true, which is very true. What we're seeing as a trend is that because users and security teams are so accustomed, they're so familiar with this mode of attack, it's becoming less and less efficient from time to time. And new types of attack are coming in. For example, sharing a malicious file or attachment over a Teams session or over a Slack session. Collaboration tools are new. They're very trusted. So if I'm using my Teams within the Votiro group, I pretty much, from a psychological standpoint, I trust messages coming in through Teams much more than I trust emails. And as such, I'm more likely to open an attachment. So if I receive a message over my Teams account, which may happen to be coming in from an external source, I'm more likely to open that attachment, and the damage, therein lies the damage, the potential damage. A second vector of attack is cloud storage. I have someone sharing with me a link to a SharePoint location or to a Dropbox location with potentially malicious files. It might even be someone that is unknowingly doing so. I may be working with a third party legal firm who is sharing contracts with me, not knowing that those contracts, the template for those contracts, have been weaponized, and they don't know that. They share that contract with me, I open it up, it explodes on my endpoints, does the damage. So collaboration tools, cloud storage, third-party facing portals, customer portals, partner portals, that's what on most of the minds of the CISOs nowadays that I speak with. Why? Because those have very little security tools around them. They have very little visibility and capabilities within the cybersecurity market that actually solve those problems, which is why we're seeing a spike in attempted attacks through those. So let me show you what you could be doing with analytics. The first question is, we want to identify risky entry points. And we want to do that in real time. Why? Because if we know where attacks are coming in from, we know what we need to remediate. So we want to identify security gaps. We want to enforce later on prevention policies. So real-time remediation will then occur. Remediation will not be a post-mortem event, but will actually be a preventative action. So I'd like to brag here just a bit with some of the new dashboards that we've come out with just lately in the past few weeks. Threat analytics dashboards. I'm not showing you the whole dashboard. I'm showing you snippets in order to help you through and walk you through that process of analysis. So the first thing I would be doing in the Votiro threat analytics dashboard, if I can only move this zoom bar, there you go. The first thing I would be doing is I'd be looking at my daily dashboard and seeing, hey, something wrong is happening because I'm identifying a suspicious activity, a spike in suspicious activity coming in. I still don't know much about that activity, but I do know that something is happening. The second thing I'd be doing is I'd be going to our feed that shows you which of the entry points are at a higher level of risk at the moment. So Votiro integrates, we're a layer 7 platform. We integrate API to API, cloud to cloud with email services and cloud storages and on-prem storages and SaaS applications and everywhere where files reside. So the first thing I do is I move into that view and I see that 16 emails have come in, 24% of them being suspicious because they carry content that we have found, that Votiro secret sauce, things we've found within files that we know are suspicious. So now I know that an entry point that is currently being exploited is an email-based attack. I'm giving this as an example. It could be your Teams account or any other entry point that has integrated with Votiro. Now that I know that that is coming in through email, my next step is to go into a detailed view, a filtered out view of that specific mode of attack, where I can figure out who is sending. Oh, by the way, that is Eric from Votiro, which is me. I'm an insider threat. I've been sending malicious content specifically into your environment. And now I can drill down into every one of these incidents and figure out what exactly is Eric attempting to do through that email-based attack. So we'll pause here with issue number 1, where as you integrate Votiro, it's highly important to point out that Votiro can be put in place both in active mode, which means we will remediate in real time for you. We will remove those threats for you. We can also be put in place in analytics mode, in insights mode. So when Votiro is being put in insights mode, everything that comes in, all files that file through us will be delivered to their endpoint, to their end target application as is, in the original form, which may be malicious or suspicious. And we still will provide you the insights. Why? Because you'd like to see where those threats are coming in from. Once you realize where threats are coming in from, you can turn on the disarm part of Votiro, which means we will be sanitizing and cleaning those files for you, making them safe for anyone to use in real time, and we will still be providing you these insights so you can adjust your policies in real time. Moving on. The question of who. The question of who is a really, really important question, because if for some reason, let's say I'm a hacker and I'm sitting in, name a random country somewhere around the globe. I am trying to hack into a specific financial institute. Maybe one way to do that would be posting resumes through an HR portal that I know the HR person would not only open, but they would most probably download it and then send it over through Outlook or through Gmail or through Teams or Slack, or maybe upload it to Dropbox to share it with hiring managers and with HR personnel and others within the team. So that's an attack vector that's easy for me as a hacker. What's important for me as an analyst, for me as a security team, is to understand which users are being targeted. Because if I am identifying a mode of attack, I would be much more efficient if I could alert a specific team or alert a specific individual or take action, preventative action with specific individuals or teams, than try to implement something which is across the entire organization, which may be an enormous organization. right? I'd be much more effective in preventing a specific mode of attack when I know exactly who is being targeted or who is an insider threat who is actually attempting malicious conduct. So by doing that, I could remediate quickly. I could mitigate, for example, spear phishing types attack. And the way I would do that with Votiro is I log into my dashboard in the morning, and guess what I find? I find that someone called demo user, someone called demo user is seeing a spike in suspicious malicious content coming in. Okay, now I know I need to be aware. The next thing I do is I go into the sequence of events and the events, and I actually search for that user in order to determine what exactly is happening there. Is this truly malicious? Is it suspicious? Maybe it's benign. Maybe it is a file that actually that user was waiting for, but we still need to investigate. So as such, I drill down into that specific user and I can see, yes, indeed, this specific user has received a significant amount of email with either the zipped archive files that carry suspicious content in them that we found and we've removed, or emails containing attachments that may be dangerous, HTML attachments and others. The nice piece, as you can see here, is that these are yet again analytics and insights which happened after we've prevented the issue from occurring. So these users were indeed targeted. Votiro made the file safe and delivered the file safely, and yet we're letting you know, hey, be aware. These users, these groups are being targeted currently. You could take some potentially educational action items and work with that team to understand that mode of attack. Why? Because if that team is being targeted, if that specific team or person is being targeted, I promise you that is not the only mode of attack that attack will be attempted. Potentially, in addition to malicious content, that specific user may also be a victim of credential theft or a spear phishing email, right? So that individual needs to be aware that they are being targeted and increase the level of awareness for other types of attacks. That can also feed into a SIM to conduct a broader research. So summarizing the who, it's important to understand who is being targeted because then we can take more focused action and we can implement more policies that would then once again prevent the issue from occurring. I know this sounds like more work, but the difference is this is preventative work. It will save you that time from post-mortem analytics and post-mortem cleaning up of the damage that was already done. Last but not least, and I'm trying to keep this as sweet and short as possible, the question of what type or how am I being attacked? This is a very, very specific and important element when analyzing risk. I know all of you SOC analysts out there and CISOs, you get this, you understand this, but this is always important to talk about. There are many types of attacks coming in through files and unstructured data. The Casbanero attack, which I talk about a lot, that started as a Latin America attack focusing on financial institutions, then drifted into Europe as well, European financial accounts being attacked, and then North America. It all starts with an email with an embedded HTML file, which points to a malicious domain, takes you to a malicious domain, downloads an archive file which contains some scripts in it, that executes a PowerShell dropper, points you to another malicious domain, which then downloads a zip archive, which then plants itself on your endpoints, starts harvesting credentials. Why all of that multi-step scenario? Because that is an easy way to evade the security controls you have in place. If you knew that that type of attack is actually happening right now, you may be able to prevent it in the first place. So how do we do that? Let's start with our 1, 2, 3 action mode that we started earlier. So we want to identify the mode of attack so we can take preventative remediation. And then to add that information into threat hunting. So once again, we start our morning with the Votiro dashboard, and we can see, interesting enough, on this right-hand side, I hope you can see it, we can actually see the threat type of what is called script tags. So script tags can come as an attack vector within an HTML file. We can see that we're seeing a spike in HTML attachments on the right-hand side, which is happening today. That is weird. We need to look into it. So our next step is actually to look at our feed, our threat status feed that keeps coming in and describes to you what we're actually finding. And yes, indeed, we are finding that a significant amount of script tags are being removed from HTML files. Now, the next step is actually to drill into one of these incidents to try and figure out what exactly is happening. And what we're finding is that all of these scripts are being removed from HTML attachments that were attached to emails going into a specific inbox. So now you have the whole picture. Now you're seeing how you're being attacked, who's being attacked, and through what medium. Script tags for HTML files coming in through email to a specific user sent by Eric at Votiro. So now we know who's doing it. And obviously we have more information that would now help us remediate. For example, maybe we would want to add a policy that says, for now, block HTML attachments, or even better, sanitize HTML attachments, right? We don't want to always block content. If this is a highly sensitive environment, we may want to block. For all other cases, we could say sanitize and deliver safe HTML attachments which do not contain the script tag. So if you can see this, I don't know if it's too small, but in the middle of the screen, you can actually see what happened within that file. Super interesting. Email with an HTML attachment with a suspicious script that was actually removed from that HTML file in the process, and the safe file was delivered. So with that said, I would like to show you something interesting because I promised you some adrenaline on this webinar. And what I'm going to do right now is the following. So I'm going to send an email from Eric, me, the suspicious insider, to an email address called team@contentdisarming.com, which is a demo environment that we have. And I'm going to call this email, no risk at all, please open attachment. Obviously, a very non-suspicious looking email. And I will attach a file which I have downloaded from VirusTotal. It's an HTML file called deposit. My knees are shaking because this is truly a malicious file. And I hope I don't mistakenly double click on it because then my MacBook would be pretty much destroyed. And I send that over and hop back here. And now what I'm going to do is hop quickly into the Votiro platform. So what you're seeing in front of you, and I apologize to my IT team for putting my laptop at risk. What you're seeing here is actually the feed on the right-hand side, the analytics being provided here. What I've showed you as step number 1 on each one of these 3 cases, what you do in the morning as step into your Votiro dashboard is exactly what you're seeing here. Now, as we refresh the information, we can see on our incident screen that this incident is Eric at Votiro sending to team@content-disarming. We see the email attachment, we see the file sanitized, and as we move into the detail itself, we can actually find that this email contained a few things, including an HTML attachment, a few JPEGs, and this deposit HTM, which is the suspicious file and the script that has just been removed. And now we're safe, and I know that I can actually download the original file and open it on my desktop with no risk whatsoever. And that went well. I think we are safe to move on at this point. I think I made my point. Let's move quickly on because I know we're pretty much close to the top of the top of the 30 minutes that we've allocated for this webinar. And I'd like to kind of bring things full circle. We talked about where threats are coming in from, who is being targeted or who is targeting, and what type of attacks. All of those are very, very valuable insights for you. But more importantly, they're important for you, especially after we prevented the risk from coming in. And because we've already prevented it, we want to know more about it in order to continuously improve our security stance so we can continue to proactively prevent these risks instead of cleaning up the mess after it happened. Votiro is a real-time content security platform. We detect, disarm, and analyze risks within files, within unstructured data. We add value, and we increase the security levels of your email security gateways, your email platforms, your edge projects, your SSE projects, if it's Zscaler or Palo or Fortinet or Menlo. We add security onto your cloud environments, your AWS instances, or Azure, or GCP, your data stores. We integrate with those so we can make files safe for you. Why? Because they don't. Because these technologies do not make files safe. They either block them, quarantine them, they do not make them safe. We make them safe so your users can actually use them. We also add value to detection and response technologies. Why? Imagine your latest endpoint detection project and the amount of false positives and alarms that keep shooting off in your SOC. A whole lot of false positives that the SOC team needs to spend time on. What we do is, once Votiro is put in place, because it is a preventative approach, it actually reduces over 90% of those alarms, and your SOC and SOC team can now focus on what really matters, and not spend most of the day trying to analyze hundreds of alerts and alarms. Finishing up with what makes us unique. We're a global company. We integrate as a layer 7 technology. We're not an endpoint technology. We integrate in the cloud, API to API, with your emails and everything I've mentioned earlier, collaboration tools and browser downloads and SaaS applications and cloud storage. We're headquartered in the US. We're SOC 2 compliant. And we make files safe for your users so they can use them in real time. That is us. And I will now open up the floor for questions if we have any.